Hi, John the Drivability Guy here. Today I just want to take a short amount of your time to show you an interesting build project that I was involved in. It all started back in January of 2020. I was down at the AVI training conference doing some unrelated type of training classes, and the owner of AVI, Paul Hours, came to me and said, hey, we'd like to do a whole start to finish electrification type of class. So what that involves is we start off with basic electricity, we go into starting and charging systems. From there we go into reading and interpreting wiring diagrams. From that point we go into starting and charging systems, then into hybrid vehicles, then finally we end up with the full-on 100% electric vehicle. So I said no problem, I'm definitely on board for being involved in that type of project. And he then threw at me that he's going to purchase a Prius, and he wanted me to cut it up for a state-of-the-art training type of demo prop, so to speak. So the car came to me 2 weeks ago, and it came as a complete running vehicle. Our goal was to keep it a complete driving vehicle. We don't want a whole bunch of warning lights on. We want to be able to drive this car in and out of trade shows. We want to be able to use it for video shoots. We also want to then go ahead and be able to use it for live hands-on training. So I went ahead and I had a couple cars on the internet that I was able to look at and kind of use as a mold, if you want to say that type of word. But I wanted to make it a little bit different, and I wanted to make it more usable, especially when it comes to the video shoots and also the hands-on training sections of it. So I put together a little PowerPoint presentation, and I want to go ahead and just kind of show you guys, run through what the build project was like, and then I'll show you guys the car at the very end of this video here. So if we can see, the little PowerPoint presentation is up and running here, and we basically labeled it as a 2010 Toyota Prius. It has 360,000 miles on it, but the vehicle runs like a top, no kind of complaints with the vehicle whatsoever. And we'll just go ahead and go through how this whole thing came to fruition here. So like I said, we had 2 weeks to finish this project because it's now the end of February, and there's the Kansas City Vision trade show coming up, and this vehicle will also be used at several of the trade show venues across the country, like Apex and Vision and a lot of the other ones that come to mind here. So I had 2 weeks to finish it from start to finish. And day one, I just wanted to document the vehicle. Nobody has seen this vehicle. Paul bought it off eBay online, and they said it was a started and running type of vehicle, but we really couldn't tell from the pictures what kind of shape it was in. So day one, I didn't do a whole lot to it. It came on a semi-truck car hauler, and that car hauler, when I went to go get it off the actual hauler, the vehicle wouldn't even move. It had a dead 12-volt battery in it. It was riddled with all kinds of high voltage codes in it. Had some body damage on it, a couple other little quirks. So I just kind of wanted to document that and send it all over to Paul to see if he wanted to proceed onward with the actual project or not. So this is what the vehicle looked like when it came to the shop here. I am from Ohio, so there is snow on top of the vehicle there. But we were able to get the vehicle inside the shop, and like I said, the day one was primarily just documenting what the vehicle looked like and what we had to build from. So you can see, all the different warning lights that were on the dashboard area. The vehicle does run at this point. Obviously, everything's been repaired on it. Some of the codes that it had in it were a random cylinder misfire code, cylinder 2 specific misfire code, high voltage system interlock circuit high, hybrid battery positive, contractor control circuit high, hybrid battery pre-charge contractor control circuit high, lost communication with hybrid battery pack sensor module. As you can see, quite a few different high voltage related trouble codes in the vehicle. And again, my whole purpose on this was just to document my findings. I even took pictures that it has 2 different style rims on the vehicle, which I don't have an answer for why that could possibly be. Again, 360,000 miles, served the customer well for all that time. Day 2, after documenting my findings, I called Paul and he's like, yeah, go ahead, don't worry about the high voltage codes right now, just proceed onward with the build project, because it's a pretty monumentous type of task here to cut this vehicle up and make it so that it's a professional looking training and trade show prop for us to be able to use at different venues here. So Paul said, go ahead and do it. We'll worry about the high voltage codes afterwards. Like I said, at this point, all the codes have been repaired properly. So day 2, I started off with just disassembling everything that would pretty much bolt on. Our goal was to have one side of the vehicle cut so that we could, and also have the roof off so that we could actually, when we're doing a live training class, have a group of guys around it and everybody could see it. Everybody would be able to, you know, understand exactly what we're doing. There's not going to be any restricted sights, so to speak, here. So I started unbolting the fenders, the doors, took the windshield out, all that kind of stuff, the rear tailgate assembly. So as you can see, as we went through here, pulled it up in the shop, and just started going to town, taking stuff apart on it. A couple other little pictures as the progress proceeded here. And like I said before, some of my previous YouTube videos, I'm kind of a neat freak, and I got to tell you that during the process of this build, it pretty much destroyed my shop. But you know, I went ahead and cleaned it all up at this point, so not that big of a deal anymore. What I started to do is, as I took the parts off, I wanted to save them. My goal was, for a little bit later on in the build, I wanted to install some similar style dead products, so a dead inverter, a dead battery pack, and I figured maybe I could do some horse trading online with some of these body parts for a junkyard or salvage yard, whatever you want to call it, to be able to try to work out a deal to be able to get some of these other components here. So I started to just stockpile a little pile of parts here as I went through. As you can see here, here's the tailgate assembly. You know, I didn't break any of the glass that I didn't have to. The only glass that I broke was actually the windshield. I've come to the conclusion that I can never be a windshield guy. You know, I just don't have the ability to take one out without cracking it. We can see a headlight on the ground there. The tail light on the passenger side we actually reused. We had to cut it, but we actually ended up reusing that. So as you can see, I started doing my cuts here. So I cut the B pillar out of the vehicle, and this was all still day 2 of the build here. And as I started taking the headliner out and a lot of the other components here, the interior and stuff, you could see the wiring nightmare started to come to fruition, so to speak. Remember, we don't want to have any kind of warning lights on. We still want this vehicle to be just like you want to get in it and drive it across the country. So I was going to have to contend with all that wiring harness and stuff at some point in the future, but right now I was primarily concerned about making all the cuts. So the B pillar, the doors, the fender, the tailgate assembly, the interior, all that stuff has been removed at this point. And obviously, when you make these cuts, there's going to be quite a few sharp edges. So we're going to have to contend with all that. We don't want anybody cutting themselves severely or anything. So we're going to have to make some caps and do a whole lot of body and paint work on this vehicle as well. So you can see there's the back view. You can kind of see still the high voltage battery pack is still connected. Or it's installed in the vehicle, I should say. I did go ahead and remove the high voltage disconnect plug and also disconnected the 12-volt battery and waited the appropriate amount of time and did the test at the inverter to make sure all the capacitors were discharged before I started doing any of the cuts. Remember, with a high voltage system, you always want to practice safe operations here. You don't want to run the risk of getting any kind of electrocution or anything along those lines. So once I went ahead and disconnected all that stuff, it pretty much stayed disconnected until the vehicle's build was all done. I didn't reconnect it again until I had to start fixing those high voltage codes here. So you could kind of see the progress as we went through, more of the wiring harness and stuff, We also cut the front half of the bumper cover and stuff off, took the wheel wells out. The reason why we did that is, those of you that know, this is a Generation 3 Prius. It's got an electric AC compressor, so we're going to be using that in the training classes that we do. So we want to have access to all of this stuff. So this is the theory behind the cuts that we actually made here. Here we can see that there's a lot of wiring that we're going to have to take care of. I had a whole bunch of different ideas on how to do that. I'll talk more about it as the presentation goes along here. But again, we don't want this to have any kind of trouble codes or warning lights or anything along those lines when it's 100% done. So this pretty much is the end of day 2, and it doesn't look like a whole lot of work was done, but I got to tell you, it was a full day's worth of work. I came down on a Saturday. I'm an early bird. I started about 5 o'clock in the morning. I ended up going home on Saturday that day about 4 o'clock in the evening after all those cuts and all the disassembly and everything along those lines. Day 3, I came back and I said, okay, well, now I'm going to cut the A-pillar and I'm going to cut the roof off the vehicle. We had to support the roof, so obviously the whole passenger side, all the supports are cut at this point. And then once I went to the driver's side to do the cuts, the roof would want to just fall in on you. So, and you have to be both inside the vehicle and outside the vehicle to make some of these cuts, because there's some supports and stuff on the bottom side of the roof. So, you know, common sense takes over and you try to cut all the ones on the inside while there's still a little bit of stability left, and then you try to just do the outside cut, and then this way it's a little bit more safe. But I still went ahead and propped up some 2x4s as we started doing the cuts there. So you can see how the 2x4s were cut up, or were cut and wedged in place while we were making some of these cuts. And after the cut was made and the roof was kind of just dangling there, I'm a one-man shop, so I pretty much had to just wait for somebody to walk through the door to help me, you know, go ahead and remove the roof from the vehicle. So it was a parts driver that came to deliver some parts for some vehicles, and I said, hey, give me a hand, and put these gloves on, grab the lighter side of the roof there, and let's go ahead and take it off and put it off to the side so we could get the cut off. So now you can kind of see what the vehicle looked like, and you can start to formulate an opinion on how this whole thing is going to be used in training classes at this point. But the roof has now been removed, all the cuts have been done. Only thing I have to do at this point is start doing some body and paint work on it to smooth out all those cuts, and then start the actual build project for the actual training purposes of the vehicle. So here's another side view of all the cuts that were made. Lots of sharp edges on it at this point. Can't tell you how many band-aids I went throughout this process, but it's starting to come to fruition. And now we're going to day 4. And day 4, I said, okay, you know, even though I did do a little bit of body and paint work over my career, it's been several years, and plus we have this timeline that we got to try to meet here. So I called up a good buddy of mine who does a lot of body and paint work. He has his own shop not too far away. His name is Jimmy Douglas. I've known him for years. I actually grew up with the kid. He's actually older than me. So I actually grew up with him, and I called him out and asked him to come down and give me a hand here. And we both started attacking some of these caps we had to make, you know. So I got some other pictures here. There's a picture of the VIN tag there just for the paint code. But the high cut on the passenger quarter, I got to tell you, Jimmy knocked this out of the park. You know, he's like, this one's got to be really nice because, you know, this is the high cut. This is the one everyone's going to see. So we went ahead, and every one of these little caps that we made, we've got supported really well. You know, you can actually stand on any one of them. So, you know, before the caps were put on, we welded in 1-inch bar stock, you know, so they had a nice big brace to it. We kind of joked about it, and we said, well, we're going to use the sheet metal out of the roof, so this way it's still a numbers matching car. So we went ahead and cut up the roof to use all the sheet metal out of it to make these caps. So we had to make several trips to Home Depot to buy all kinds of bracketry and bar stock and everything along those lines, but the actual sheet metal caps were all made from the actual roof of the vehicle. So he started on this, and he formed this thing pretty nice. like I said, we've got it all braced up and everything. And we went ahead, and you can see that the quality of his craftsmanship here, it forms pretty much right into the body line, so very little mud work would have to be done on it. As the day went on here, we decided, boy, the back part of this thing, it would be really cool if we cut the taillight and reinstalled that. So we cut the taillight on the passenger side, went ahead and reinstalled it, but at that point you got to make a cap for the top of the taillight. So I went ahead and made a cap, and Jimmy Douglas is like, this is no good. We're going to go ahead and do something really cool here. We're just going to feather the body work right into it. So it kind of looks like $1 million at this point. He really has a good eye and a lot of talent to be able to make these vehicles turn out pretty nice looking when they're all done. So here's just some more pictures. We still got to make a cap for the other side of the vehicle here on the high roof line on the driver's side. But you can see the airbags and everything are still all connected inside this vehicle. And at this point, after we did the first cap on there, I decided, while Jimmy Douglas isn't going to stay, 12 hours a day or anything, we'll go ahead and I'll start contending with the wiring here and there just to try to keep forward progress going on this build project. So again, the driver's side cut, if I had to do it all over again, I would probably go ahead and make that about 8 or 10 inches wider than I did. The only reason that I kind of used this format here was I looked at a couple of these vehicles online, and they were all cut pretty close to the side. So, but if I had a lot more room left on the roof area, I could have just bent that down and could have saved us a lot of time in making a cap for that side. But at this point, it is what it is. We had to make the cap, so that was one of the last things that we actually did. Day 5, we cut the passenger taillight, and once again, Jimmy went ahead and molded it right into the rear quarter patch. It's a pretty cool look. It took majority of the day to actually do that, but there's my buddy Jim there. You can see how the taillight is now installed in the vehicle, and with the mud work and everything that we did, we fiberglassed it right into place there, and then we just put a light coating, a Bondo on the top of it to go ahead and finish it. While he was doing that, we were going ahead and also making the caps for the B pillar and also the A pillar, welding them in place, starting to put some light mud work and stuff along those areas to start the body work on that process as well. Like I said, as you can see, it totally just took over the whole production of the shop there because of the time frame. So, it can be done in a couple weeks, maybe even faster, depending on your skill level, but this was definitely a huge build in the small amount of time. Day 6, another day of metal fab work to make plates for various cuts that we've done. Welded together a spare frame that I started to say, well, if I'm going to be using this in training classes, I want to be able to go ahead and have it user-friendly, so to speak. So I had another battery pack, high voltage battery pack, and I'm like, it'd be really cool if I welded a frame together, put it on some hinges, some pull-out hinges, put it in the trunk area so you can actually pull the battery. That one's dead, 100% safe. Everybody can touch it, feel it, do whatever, and be able to see it. So, while Jimmy was doing some of his talented mud work and stuff, I was going ahead and starting the metal fab process on the battery pack and some of the other areas that I wanted to include there. So you can kind of see here's the spare dead battery pack. I've already got it mounted on the hinges and stuff. And like I said, this thing just folds right in and out of the trunk area, 100% safe for everybody to touch. And my thought process was, when we go ahead and do this type of training, I'm going to have the people go ahead and do the various tests and everything, pretend like these dead components are live, and once I observe them doing the process correctly, then I'll go ahead and say, okay, now we're going to take the covers off the real stuff on the vehicle, and we're going to do it the exact same way to get the valid results. But it's just one more safety step when you're dealing with the high voltage electronics on one of these vehicles to make sure that everybody's 100% safe while they're actually doing the actual the various testing procedures that we're going to cover in the training classes. So here you can see we've got the battery pack done, and we also have that higher quarter patch done. You can kind of see how the whole thing is feathered in here, starting to look pretty nice. You'll notice that all the wiring at this point has also been taken care of. So I went ahead and did whatever I had to do and all the airbags and seatbelt pretensioners and everything is all still connected in this vehicle. I did whatever I had to do to make sure there wasn't going to be any kind of warning lights or anything along those lines. So you can kind of see the B pillar cut down at the bottom there, the patch that I made for that, and also the finished body work on it, the A pillar cut, same scenario. We had to cut the metal out of the roof to actually make the actual patches. Any of the large patches, we didn't want the sheet metal to have to flex or anything, so I've got that all braced up and welded together. So it's got a lot of strength to it. Here we have day 6 coming about. Our goal today was to go ahead and put it in primer, do a little bit of sanding on it. If we had to do any more little small mud work for any low spots or anything, we went ahead and did that. But we wanted to put it in finished primer and get it ready to start painting at this point. Notice that when you have a hybrid vehicle, as you guys are aware, especially on Toyota Priuses, you can't really push these vehicles, especially since I've got all the electronics disconnected on it. So I went ahead and used my little rolling car jacks there. Makes it real easy to move a vehicle around the shop, especially with just one person. So here's the end of the day 6. Just a little bit of fine finish sanding and then go over with a tack rag and stuff before we can start putting the paint and the clear coat on. So the main goal on day 7 was to get it in paint. So, you know, the wheel jacks, like I said, this has made it real easy to move it around the shop, sweep up all the dust and everything, so we didn't get a whole lot of dirt in the paint job when we actually sprayed the paint on it. Also wet down the floor and everything, try to keep that dust from, you know, circulating up in the air and stuff along those lines. So as you can see, we're getting it ready to push into our little makeshift spray booth area, which is pretty much right in front of the big overhead garage door with some fans and stuff. So we've got it all up on the car jacks, all the finish sanding and all the finish work and everything's been done on it at this point. As we keep going here on day 7, we've now got it, like how I said, we wet down the floor, put it right in front of the garage door, and we're starting to put the base coat on. So the base coat flowed out really nice, no dirt in the base coat whatsoever when we did this project, which was really surprising because this isn't a body shop, it's just an auto repair shop. But it flowed out really nice. I started to get a little bit excited that, hey, I'm starting to see the light at the tunnel. This car actually might meet the deadline of the 2-week time frame. So here we got just some more pictures of the base coat, different areas, the different cut areas and stuff that we did on it. And then we applied the clear coat to it, and now we started to get a little bit of a shine on the actual body parts here. This vehicle had a lot of different, you know, it's 360,000 miles, had a lot of different little scrapes and dents and stuff, so we try to take care of the majority of that. It is going to get wrapped with some sponsors, logos and stuff, but we still wanted it to look like a halfway decent car as we were going through all the working areas that we did here. So we even painted the rear bumper cover, stuff along those lines, just so everything flowed a lot better. Day 8 was another full day of fabrication for me. So at this point, you know, Jimmy worked his magic. The car looked like $1 million, you know, it was cut up, but it looked like $1 million. Couldn't even tell that it was cut at this point. So at this point, I decided, okay, I got to secure another inverter and another motor generator and obviously the TV and the Toyota TechStream scan tool and all that stuff. And I just started fabricating the build process of the training props that we're putting on the vehicle. So I went ahead and I found a guy on Craigslist. I was able to secure these parts. You can see the motor generator there. It has the rotor and stator assembly. You see an extra inverter laying there. And And now you can see that I installed the rolling TV cart in the actual passenger floor area, installed a 110 outlet so we could plug the laptop and the TV and everything in at trade shows and at training events and stuff along those lines. And it's starting to come together pretty nice at this point. At this point, I felt pretty confident we were going to meet the deadline because, you know, I was just in my fabrication type of mode at this point. So as we continued on here, as the paint started to cure and everything started to get a little bit safer to work around without having to worry about scratching up all the fresh paint here, we just kept going with the build process here. So you can kind of see how the TV stand, obviously it doesn't roll around anymore. I got that securely bolted to the passenger floor area. Give you a couple different views of how it looked from the passenger side as opposed to the driver's side. Again, the battery pull-out compartment, that was already done, but I went ahead and showed that picture again as well. And you can kind of see how the thing is starting to come to fruition. At this point, Jimmy's working on making the cap on the driver's side roof area, and I'm just continuing on with the fab process. You can kind of see in the picture on the left there that I've got the base for the swinging tree where I'm going to mount the actual stator assembly and have it so that this thing swings in and out of the vehicle, make it easier to transport this vehicle across the country. Also, when we're using it for a training class, we swing that out. We can talk about it. We can do whatever we want to do with it, and then we can swing it back in place and not have to be worried that it's in our way or anything along those lines. So basically, that was just a big steel pipe that I got mounted to the actual frame on the vehicle here, so it's nice and secure. You can kind of see I've got the OBD2 extension cable all neatly secured to the dash area, so when you're driving the vehicle, you don't have to worry about the cable hitting your leg or anything. It's just an extension cable, so eventually there's a Tech 2 that's installed, I'm not a Tech 2, a Tech Stream scan tool that's installed on that shelf, and it just plugs in right there. Here's another view of the battery pack. Again, we still have all the live components on the car as well as the actual dead components for training purposes here. You can see here I even installed that little antenna. I took it off the roof. I wanted everything to work on this vehicle. So the vehicle's navigation system, the radio, all that stuff still works on the vehicle. I just relocated the antenna off the roof, put it right over by the A-pillar area there. Day 9, I mounted the extra stator windings up to the tree. So you can kind of see how I finished that little swivel tree. I've got it so it sticks out, plus it actually swivels back in. Started to mount the actual inverter, the spare inverter underneath the hood area. This way you can take the cover off, you can look at the capacitors, you can talk about how to do the testing to see if the actual system's dead or not. You can go through all the training related stuff safely on the dead component first, and then go over to the live component once everybody's ready here. Everything's not done yet, but you can kind of see how I've got the stator windings, you know, just resting on the swivel pipe tree set up right now. Day 10 was spent labeling all the high voltage components on the vehicle. So I went ahead, I wanted to pay as close attention to detail as possible, and I figured, hey, this is going to be great in a training atmosphere that we can go through and we can talk about whether it's a cooling vent for the high voltage battery pack or whether it's high voltage wiring or whatever the case happens to be. I spent a lot of time labeling the stuff that's kind of important. I put a little makeshift plastic cover over the live inverter. The main purpose for that, you can't really get hurt from that unless you start taking the covers apart and stuff. But the main purpose for that was more so at trade shows, you know. Sometimes somebody might be screwing around at a trade show, even though it'd be next to impossible. You know, they'd have to remove the 10mm bolts and stuff to get those connectors off, but it's just kind of a little check and balance there. I secured the stator windings to that pipe there, so you don't have to worry about it at a trade show, somebody taking that off the pipe and dropping it, because it does got a lot of weight to it, dropping it on their toes or anything along those lines. You can see how I started labeling the different components here. Day 11, I made some extra display boxes for the rotor assembly from the motor generator, and also had a good buddy of mine go ahead and graciously give me some spare battery individual cells. So I'm like, I'm gonna put all this stuff in this vehicle, make it all there on display. It'd be great for training purposes. You can hold the individual cells in your hand, everything along those lines. I also made some little signage that not planning on using the signs in the least bit in training or the actual videos. Those are more so for when the car's on display at a trade show. Somebody could walk over if they're not really sure what an inverter does or anything. It gives them just some bullet points, background information on whatever components they happen to be looking at the time there. So that was the theory behind that part of it. You can kind of see on the passenger floorboard now how I've got the motor generator's rotor section securely mounted to the little board here, the little display board. I even wrapped the boards in the same color carpeting that the vehicle has, so it kind of blends in, looks nice. Here's my battery individual cell little training board that I have on display as well. Again, you can kind of see how I wrapped the boards in the carpeting. I also went ahead and put together a little 3-ring binder of the various pictures, kind of what you're seeing right now from day 1 all the way through to day 13, the 2-week process of how this vehicle took shape here. And again, this is more so for a trade show. If somebody's walking around, they got interest in it, they could kind of see the progress as it went through. And now we have the actual cap on the driver's side as well. So you can kind of see we no longer have any exposed sharp edges whatsoever. The vehicle is 100% safe to work around. People can touch any part of it. Don't have to worry about getting electrocuted. Don't have to worry about getting any kind of cuts or anything along those lines. Again, that was 100% Jimmy Douglas's talent there that made that cap. And you can kind of see how I repositioned some of the signs here, and the vehicle's starting to take shape. This is day 11, there's only 2 days left. Not a whole lot more to do on this vehicle. Here you can see how we got the access to the AC compressor, so we can talk about that in the training classes, do the stuff we want to do on that as well. And I'm just showing different views from all sides of the car with the props that we have put in there. And then day 12 I came and I said I really didn't like the way how the battery pack individual cell box was just sitting on top of the high voltage battery that was still mounted to the vehicle. So I went ahead and made another little pipe assembly that I was able to mount that up higher so that it's more in the line of vision, and you could take the little individual cells off, hold them in their hands. They can do whatever they want to do with them at this point. Day 13, this was the final day, and on day 13, the last step I had to do is install the Toyota TechStream scan tool, hook it up to the TV, made everything with all the cabling and all that kind of stuff. So now you can see the Toyota TechStream scan tool is 100% operational. And this way, when we use it in the training classes, we can show exactly, all the various data stream PIDs and any kind of codes or any of that kind of stuff that we wanted to see. We tell them that, hey, this is what the Toyota scan tool has to offer. You can use your individual snap-ons or OTCs or whatever and see, how much you can do with those aftermarket scan tools. So at this point, the vehicle is pretty much done. I have one more, or actually a couple more slides here that will show you the projected look after the vehicle is 100% wrapped with the logos and stuff. So there's the projected look of what it's going to look like. It's going to be sponsored by the Group Training Academy, which is a conglomeration of Pronto Auto Parts, Federated Auto Parts, AVI, different sponsors in the industry here. So that's the projected look. It won't be wrapped until after the Vision Show. That's going to get wrapped when it goes back to Fort Myers, Florida, which is where AVI is from. So all in all, the conclusion, this was actually a pretty exciting build for me. It's something that, you know, most people can't say that they've ever done. You know, take a car, cut it up, turn it into a training type of project here. But this is something that, as an instructor, I was able to build this 100% the way how I liked it. And I got to thank Paul Lowers for allowing me to do that. He gave me free reign over the build process here. He just wanted it so that it was going to fit all the needs that he had for it, which was the trade show and tell type of stuff, the video shoots, and also the live hands-on training classes that we plan to do with it. So overall, it was a pretty exciting build for me. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to just go ahead and take the camera and give you a walk around view of the actual live vehicle here. It's going to be, the video quality is going to get a little shaky here because obviously I'm going to be holding the camera as we go through this, but I apologize for that, but I'm going to try to narrate a couple of the things as we go through here. So let me go ahead and get the camera from the tripod area here. Here we'll go ahead and take a look at it from the front area. You can kind of see the whole video lights and everything all set up. But here we got the front area of the vehicle. I'll do some close-up walking here, explain as we go through. There's the little plastic cover over the live inverter. But here's the dead inverter. This cover will come off. We'll talk about, you know, everything that they need to do inside here with checking to make sure once they remove the service plug and stuff to make sure that the capacitors are discharged and it's safe to take the high voltage linesman gloves off at that time to actually do work without all the personal protection devices. So we'll just keep on walking as we go through. Here we just got the actual little 3-ring binder with the picture progress book here. Here's a view from the overall driver's side. As you could tell, not a whole lot of work was done on this side with the exception of the top cap area that we were able to make so that when the vehicle gets wrapped, it's nice and smooth. A view from the back part of the vehicle. There's the folding little high voltage battery pack. Again, this is 100% dead, can touch whatever I want on it, don't have to worry about getting shocked. I have an individual cell here that's all labeled that people can hold in their hands, do whatever they want to do with it. We talk a lot about it in the training classes. I've got everything labeled here so you can see the temperature sensor for the battery pack, all that kind of stuff, the battery pack module. Everything is highlighted and labeled. There's the high voltage disconnect plug on a Toyota Prius if you've never seen that before. So again, the theory is do the tests and everything, explain how the system works, do the tests on the dead components, and then once they pass doing that test correctly, then we'll go ahead in the training class and take off the covers of the live components and do the exact same tests again. Here we can see how we feathered in that tail light on this side. Pretty nice job, I think. Coming over to the actual meat side of the whole build here. Here's the actual little cell stand that I made for the spare cells. Again, the labeling everywhere where it needs to be. There's the Toyota TechStream scan tool hooked up with the big monitor, so when there's a group of guys, everybody can gather around and see everything 100%. There's the stator windings with the swivel tree. Again, we've got the OBD2 extension cables, the 110 outlet, everything's put together to make it as easy to use in training as possible. There's the rotor assembly from the motor generator. So, and again, all this stuff has a lot of weight to it. So this is something that you definitely want to make sure that you have everything secured properly so nobody can get hurt just from, you know, clumsiness, so to speak. So overall, like I said, this was a pretty exciting build for me. Never done something like this before. And you know, I'm looking forward, if we got to do one for an electric vehicle, looking forward to doing that as well. This is something that if you have any interest on obtaining some type of training on hybrids or electric vehicles, definitely look up the AVI's website. We're going to be shooting the training videos here at the end of March. So I don't know how long it's going to take them to edit them and everything, but shouldn't be too long. You'll be able to start your learning curve for pretty much how the industry is all taking shape for us here. So again, thank you for your time watching this little YouTube video here. And if you happen to have enjoyed anything you saw here, please give me the thumbs up and be sure to subscribe to my channel. Thanks.